Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on the 99 Dakota RT. I've been doing some dyno testing. It's been a while since I've really done something with it, and I've really, because I ordered a cam 2.5 months ago, it just took a while to get here. All the intake testing I've done, all the testing I've done, from my ported kegger to the factory RPM air gap not ported, it was like a 5, maybe 10 horsepower all the way at the top of the rev range, where it picked up some power, but for the most part it really didn't care. And it flows significantly more than the kegger. And from what other dynos have showed me, or people showing me their graphs, it should have picked up like 30 horsepower or something. It didn't. So through all my throttle body testing and everything else I've done, it really doesn't seem to care. Now I've come to the conclusion that the cam is just too small. It does have a comp cam in it. It's just a shelf cam. I'll put the part number up later. But it's 216, 224 duration, 512 lift, and I've got 1.7 Harlan Sharps on it. And this thing idles pretty mildly. It's not beating the ground. It's not a very aggressive cam. So I really think that's our setback. So before I continued doing any more dyno stuff, I wanted to put a bigger cam in and see what it does. I'll probably end up putting a kegger on just to see the difference from the kegger to the RPM air gap later on down the road. For right now, I know what this made. I've still got the dyno graph somewhere of when I did the intake swap. It just wasn't much, which was quite depressing for that much work. Also, for the guys with mild truck builds, if you're not really making that much power, it kind of pointed out that the RPM air gap really wasn't worth it for a low-end street truck. This thing's making 300 a tire consistently, but I'm aiming for more, like hoping 350. This cam's not going to quite get us there, but I'm hoping cam. And then once I port the crap out of this intake manifold, that we'll get there. So anyway, we're going from a 216, 224 at 512 to a 236, 242, and it's going to be around 570, 580 lift with the 1.7s. It's 544, 558 with 1.6s. So do the math. We'll do that later. But so we're going from that really mild cam to this much more aggressive cam. Now on this one, I'm gonna have to check piston and valve clearance. I'm gonna have to do those things just in case. I don't want to get bit by that. So I'm gonna try to do a decent job going through this. I'm not gonna go bolt by bolt on how to do this. I'm gonna tell you what tools I'm gonna use and what I'm gonna take off, and then I'm just gonna get after it. It's Saturday, it's raining. I hope to have this thing back running in 6 hours, hopefully less. But I am gonna degree it. I am going to check piston and valve. I'm not going to do it with a dial indicator. I've just got check springs. As I roll it through, I'm going to push the valve open and make sure it doesn't touch anywhere. As long as I've got significant room, I'm just going to let it rip. Let's get after it. There's going to be a lot of time lapse in this video. Anyway, first thing I'm going to do, battery out, radiator flushed and out, hoses out of the way, and then we'll go on from the next step from there. Next, we're going to remove everything off the front dress. There's a connector here in the alternator, 11mm 7/16 socket gets this cable off, 15mm for the belt tensioner, and everything else is 14. You don't have to remove the tensioner bracket or the power steering pump bracket. That stuff's out of the way. It's not a problem. So on mine, I got my heater hose. It's just plugged off right now because the heater core's messed up in this truck, and I really don't care right now. It's summer. So flat blade or 5/16, get this hose off. 14mm bolts gets the water pump off. Now I'm going to pull the intake manifold off in as big of a chunk as possible. So I'll leave throttle body and stuff on. I'll just disconnect throttle cables and the fuel feed line. And of course, disconnect all the electronics and push them to the side. And then 1/2 inch gets the manifold off. With the air gap, it's a heck of a lot easier than a kegger, just because you got so much more room back here to get to things. Next thing we're going to do is pull the distributor out. I went ahead and marked the distributor in a block, just staked it with a flat blade screwdriver. It's a 1/2 inch wrench, takes that retainer out. I highly doubt that that cam and this cam, like that's going to be clocked perfectly the same, so I'll probably have to do a fuel resync, but that's not a big deal. I've got a snap-on scanner. Anyway, we'll get the plug wires out of the way with the distributor, make it easier to get these harnesses out of the way, and then we'll take a 7/16 and get the valve covers off. And then I've got Harlan Sharp 1/7 rockers, so I got to find a 5/16 Allen to get the rocker arms off. Then we'll pull the push rods, we'll pull the spider, which I believe is 1/2 inch too, get the lifters out of there, and then we'll move on from there. That's all out of there. Next thing we gotta do is remove the damper and then pull the timing cover. Looks like I'm gonna have to pull my little power steering cooler off, but hey, it's already got one bolt missing. I'm gonna have to use this, so it's probably gonna take me a minute. I'll have to use this style. Whenever the balancer went bad, I used to have the 3 or 6 bolt on removable pulley, and Parts Store doesn't carry that anymore, or at least to my understanding. I had checked like a month prior to buying it. Rock Auto still had the 2-piece, and then when I went to buy this one at the Parts Store, they didn't have it, the 2-piece, so I checked Rock Auto and they also didn't have the 2-piece. So that may just be discontinued at this point. But I prefer those because you just use the regular chicken foot looking puller and 3 bolts and you're good to go. But we're going to have to use this, which is missing a nut, which I could go find, but we're just going to try to hold our mouth right and get this out of here. I had to hold my mouth right because I didn't have quite the right setup, but I did get it off of there. So now we've just got to remove all these 14mm headed bolts surrounding it and 2 1/2-inch headed bolts from the oil pan side, and I'm going to try not to rip that gasket as best as possible. They sell a repair kit where you just cut it off and put new pieces on. If I can leave that alone, that's really what I'm going to try to do. Well, here we go. Now we get to play with some of my new toys. I got the Comp Cam's crank socket, because if you put the degree wheel on that bolt and then you got to turn the engine over also with that bolt, things end up moving around. So this solves that problem. Breaker bar goes right on through, fits nice and tight. Degree wheel goes on this part. Now I did mess up because this hole is not big enough for that, but I've got a unit bit that will solve that. This came Clay Smith kit from Summit. Came with the indicator, this long test and push rod, and it came with these solid lifters for flat tap it. Now mine's a hydraulic roller, so that doesn't help us here, but it's just a pretty nice kit. I've also got piston stop to help get that all lined up and some check springs. I plan on just rolling it around, want to degree it, make sure it's right. As I roll it around, I'm just going to use my finger and push on the valve every couple degrees or every 5 or whatever, just make sure I've got room where it gets tight. I don't really care to know the exact amount as long as I've got significant play. If I can tell I've got 30-40 thousandths with my finger, I don't need to worry about it. I just don't want it to blow up as soon as I start it. Well, we'll get to modifying that and get this on here, get this thing on TDC just so we can mark our stuff. Now, I've done this one time with Tim, so I think I've done this 2 times in my life, so this will be time number 3. So bear with me, but we'll get through this. We're ready to take this off. I've got it TDC number 1. I've marked my position. Well, about to mark my position. I don't know that I really have to. You can see which way this is pointing. It's pointing about right here. So as long as we get that back pointing in that direction, we'll be close enough. We'll be all right. So I'm going to blast this 5/8 headed bolt out and get these 1/2-inch ones out, get the old cam out, and then we'll lube up the new cam, stick it in. I'm going to go ahead and rotate. This is an adjustable timing set. I believe if I'm reading right and doing it right, it's a 110+4. It wants it installed at a 106, the intake center line. So I'm going to go to the triangle, which should be 4 degrees advanced, which should put it at 106. So we're just going to put it in like that and see what happens. And we'll check, roll it all through, check it, and see if it's right. Quickly realized I didn't pull the intermediate shaft out yet, so I'm going to try to hold the camshaft and rotate this forward and just spit it out. It's not too hard to get out. And we're out of there. We'll kind of look over the difference between the two, just see what we can visually see. Just eyeballing it, obviously it's kind of hard to tell. This isn't that, it's a pretty good jumping camshaft, but I could tell the angle of the ramps. These are much more broad and squared off, so the ramp rate is much quicker, which probably comes hand in hand with duration and aggressiveness, because this thing idled too well. I thought this was the biggest one you get that just drops in. Now even that still barely drops in. It was a 512 lift, which is, I think it's common for 510 to be the accepted number. for factory magnum heads not touched. You know, and that's retainer hitting valve seal. So I don't necessarily know if you can just drop this in a factory truck without a little bit of modification of the heads, but it idled way too damn smooth. I could drop it to 550 and get a little bit of lobe. Oh, there's going to be the video at the very beginning of this, the clip in the very beginning of this video, kind of tell you what it sounds like. It's not nasty, it's not aggressive. This should be. I hope. It better be. It's a lot of work. Well, I'm going to get this thing lubed up, swap over the key there, get it lubed up and stick it in. Cam slid in. I'm going to put the thrust plate back on, tighten those up, line the timing chain up for 4 degrees advanced, set the intermediate shaft back in. Really don't have to because I might have to change it, but we're going to assume 4 degrees advanced is right, and then start checking things. We'll also make sure we check camshaft place. When we tighten this up, we still have a little bit of wiggle, because if that tightens up on this plate, you probably might still be able to turn it, but under real engine speed, eventually that could become a problem. It's also something to check. Make sure that was machined right. It's comp, I'm sure it's right, but we'll check it anyway. We're not going to dial indicator, just if we can feel a slight movement, we're good. Check, make sure that key stayed nice and straight. Yep, we're good. If you can hear that click, but we got room. Alright, lower timing. Dots down. That dot is up. Pull this back off. Also, we can slide it on without shoving the key out. If it falls in the oil pan, I don't have another one here. Hopefully everything just plays nice. We can go 1 tooth over. Oh, what an idiot. Stay there. Son of a bitch. after talking to my buddy Jeff, said they may have ground that +4 in it already, so I'm putting it in straight up and checking it that way first. If it turns out right, then we leave it alone. If it's wrong, then we'll advance to retard it. But this is at least really close to TDC, and judging by how much room I still have at top dead center, I'm not too worried about it. We're still going to check everything though. So I went ahead and got that hogged out. We'll get that on. I'll bend this. This is intended to go on a bolt somewhere. Then bend it to point at the wheel, no matter where, as long as you zero it. I've got the piston stop in, so I'll turn this thing over a couple times and we'll get her zeroed in and check our center line. Alright, I've got the wheel on there. I went ahead and set it straight up, not 4 degrees advance. Buddy Jeff said they may have ground that in there already, so we're going to test it like that. If it turns out right, then that was right. If not, we'll advance it 4 if that's what it needs. So I already zeroed this up and snugged it up, and then I want to turn this over. I've got a piston stop in but not turned in yet. I want to turn it over, and I'm like, this is way too hard fighting the compression all the cylinders. So now I've taken all the plugs out, so this will be easier, so I can feel when I hit the piston stop and I'm not hard on it. One, two, three, 4. Solid 11. Seven, 8. So we'll split that. 9 is 10, 8.5. We'll go 9. Go back the other way. Nine. We'll go the other way to check again. Nine. Well, 9 1/4, 9 1/2. I'll say that's close enough. Because we can only adjust 4 up, 4 down. So half a degree there, not going to matter. All right. I take piston stop out now. That's good to go. Try not to move this. Yeah. I've got it rolled through. This is where it's going to be. I'm going to roll through it with you guys so you can see. It's going to be kind of hard to do, so I'll be moving this thing up and down a bit. But it wants 12 open. Let me wipe you off. There you go. That didn't help much. It wants 12 open, 44 close. I have 14 open, 38 close. So I'm 2 advanced and 6 advanced. And then I went to peak lift. I went like 30 thousandths below on both sides, and it showed to be about 102. So this being 6 advanced, this being 2 advanced, and this being 102, That kind of says we're a little bit ahead, but I don't think it's going to matter. The chain's still really tight. It's going to wear in. If I retard it, it'll move that 12. It'll move from 14 to 10. And it'll move this from 6 to advanced 2. And it'll put this at 106. But I think we're just going to let her rip as is. Because that chain doesn't have that many miles on it. It's still super tight. It was a pain just to get it back on there. But let's run her through. Oh, and all that nice glare. Alright. Sorry guys, this is gonna be sloppy. So. That's 25, 30, 45, 50. Well, it really doesn't like focusing on that. That 50's looking more like 15. Alright. We'll write that down. We'll do this one more time. 15. Open. Close. There's peak lift. 200. 100. 70. 60. This is so hard to do with one hand. 50. 141 from 180. 39. Alright, well that's got us 3 advanced and 7 advanced with that at 102. Now we're splitting hairs. Now I almost think we need to retard it 4 degrees to get this intake center line closer to 106 like it wants. Alright, let me think on it. Cam gear's in on the 4 degrees retarded setting. I'm going to go up to 50. 30. Oh, just a bit too far. Crap. Alright, let me set you down. We'll do it like this. I'll go to 50, then I'll pick it up. Alright, 50 at 10 and a half. I'm gonna set you back down. We're gonna go to 50 after. $50. 138. Alright, let's do math. Alright, I think we got it. We are at 10 and a half open when they want 12. We're at 42 closed when they want 44. I went 30 thousandths on both sides of peak lift. If it's not symmetrical, that's probably a problem, but I ended up with 106. So these numbers, really close. This, really close. I think we're gonna call that good. Camera was inside charging. Sorry you guys missed the piston to valve clearance. I don't want to go back through that. What I did was put it in here. I definitely see the advantage of getting solid lifters for doing this. Next time I will, because these springs do not have enough to collapse the lifter, and if you do not have an adjustable push rod, it will hold the valve open. So your base setting from where it starts to lift is skewed dramatically. You got to make sure you pay attention to that. It threw me off a little bit, but even with it holding the valve open, I still, just as the rocker arm was moving, I'd just make sure manually push it open and see how much room I had. So I'd say I got about 60 to 80 thousandths on the intake. The exhaust gets the closest, but once again, the lifter's already holding it open. But it being held open, and still I checked the lift and it got full lift, I still had room everywhere, so I'm not worried about it. If I float the valves hard enough, yeah, it's gonna eat shit, but we should be fine. So I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna get those springs back in. I checked. What was really aggravating is I was hitting, the keepers were hitting the seal. And I was like, well, there's no way it shouldn't. So I took everything off, put the keepers on, measured. I've got 630, 640 thousandths of room. I'm running 597 lift on the exhaust. So I had room, but because the lifter was already pumped up and the push rod's too long at that point, it was already holding it open. So I figured all that out. Now all we gotta do is get those springs in and get it back together. I'm probably just gonna do a time lapse of slapping all this stuff together. It's gonna be everything we did in reverse order. Just a note, while I'm going through this, these holes on the Chryslers go up. They go towards the center. Just a note, the bolts that hold down the spider, make sure you use the ones that came out. The bolt holes go straight to the cam journal, so if the bolt's too long, you're gonna start swishing the cam. That's not gonna last too long if you fire it up. Roll it over one more time before I put in the intermediate shaft. Sounds all right. And that should be pretty close to TDC. Drop the intermediate shaft in. And then you can just take a big flat blade and rotate it till it falls in. It also helps you line it up. Not it. Jump tooth, not it. Jump tooth, not it. Right there. Show you that. You can tell by the crank pin we're about TDC, and that's pointing almost straight forward. I'm just aiming at this corner. That's where we want it to be. It's the next morning. Last night the camera died, but you get the gist of it. I about had most of it put back together. It was getting dark, it was piss pouring rain. I was just working under this canopy that's not that big, so water was coming in from everywhere, but I just kept working, so I wasn't too worried about going and charging the camera. I just wanted to get done at that point. But it's together, it runs. I've set the fuel sink. That's pretty much going to be it for this video. Soon I'll be getting my wideband's not working right now, so I got to get all that fixed and kind of dial it in on the street. I'll probably go hang out with Buddy Tim later and make some plans, but I'll be on vacation all next week, so it's probably going to be 2 weeks till 3 weeks before I do anything else with the Dakota. I do have some mufflers I'm going to put on it. Just Dynamax race bullets. It's got mufflers on it and an X-pipe, but I'm just going to use these as tips where it comes out of the bedside. This will fit in there perfectly, and it kind of quiets it down just a bit. Definitely like the way it sounds. So hopefully soon we'll be able to dyno it and see what makes any difference, and then we'll port the crap out of that dual plane. It made 305 before. I'm hoping it makes 330 at least. It at least sounds nasty, and that makes me happy. So anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.